Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke, and it is now the 5th of September. And we are, I feel like, I just feel like, good morning, Jenny. I just feel like September is going to be over before we know it. It's already feels like it's moving very, very fast. Good morning, Joanne. And I'm going to be, it's another beautiful day. What I have on the docket for today is I am having to after this is over, I have to check on my students because school started yesterday. I did check in last night. Actually, upon checking in last night, I was contacted by a woman who wants to interview me about a article I did a long time ago. It was in a book called Little Horrors, and it was about monstrous, how did they put it? Monstrous constructions of having to do with children. I can't remember what the exact subtitle was, and then they re-released this. I think Routledge re-released it as a series, giving it a different title. I forget what it was. It sounded a little more academic-y sounding, and not something like Little Horrors. And so I did a chapter on black-eyed children. Okay? Black-eyed children, or BEKs as they're called for short, or black-eyed kids. They're one of those folkloric topics. There's some disagreement about how long that has been a phenomenon. That is exciting, yeah. And it seems like she's doing some research for some kind of an article, and she wanted to talk to me about this. And the article really writes about it from a Jungian perspective and about the way, whether or not this represents an alteration of, good morning, Pat. Whether this represents an alteration of the child archetype was the way that I was looking at it, because really what the whole theme of the anthology, of the essay anthology was whether or not because we always seem to see children as representing innocence and happiness and all of these things. And what this is saying to me is that, basically what they were saying is, okay, in the 21st century, when having children is expensive, when we have these ideas about where we don't necessarily look at children as being something that represents joy. Okay, he's talking about monstrous constructions of children and of childhood. And whether or not in the literature and the folklore, whether we see that shift. Simon Bacon does a lot of these anthologies. He does a lot of work on vampires and stuff like that. I was supposed to do something for one of his volumes, but it doesn't seem like that one had come through another one. But it was himself and Leo Rookby, who is very involved with the Society for Psychical Research as well, and has written volumes on ghost hunting and stuff like that. So Leo and I have had some communications, probably quite a few years ago now, when I actually wrote this piece, because he was my editor, and he was also also he was the one who got me involved with the SPR, because he had wanted me to write for them. But I guess when they were picking out things they were writing about, because I have also done things written on poltergeists and things like that. I've done presentations on that. That's something, it's not my main thing. It is something that I'm quite interested in. And good morning, Suda. So in any case, I'll find out what the interview's about, but I agreed to chat with her at 11 today. And today's the day I really want to get the website together for the school, because even though I'm not getting a lot of GoFundMe donations, I have literally probably added like 50 people just based on the ad for this school that I'm starting. So I think there's a lot of people who may be interested in the coursework or in taking the classes. So I want to get the website together, because really we've got less than a month. And I think, as I mentioned yesterday, I'm opening the school on the solar eclipse, which is, at first I was like, is that really a good idea? But the message I kind of got back on that was, no, this is a revolutionary thing you're doing, and and that's a revolutionary time. It's a revolutionary thing to do. And so anyway, so I have a little bit of a busy day today, and tomorrow I'm realizing is the only day I have. I don't have any Rouhani appointments yet for tomorrow in Milford. I don't know if any will pop up overnight, but If not, that's going to be my day to get the house clean and to get straightened up, because I actually have Rouhani appointments all weekend. I've got Saturday, I'm fully booked, and then Sunday, I'm booked right up to the time that the class is going to start at 4, which I'm having. And actually, I've got to make sure I have my notes together for that class as well. We're doing the Intuitive Development Part 3, or Class 3. And our topic for this week is going to be spirit guides. So some of you are already in for the 10 weeks, which is awesome. And I think it was Allie. I don't think she's on this morning, but she had sent me some questions last night that I have to catch up with her about. And so we're gonna talk about those. So anybody who wants to, hasn't paid for the 10-week but would like to jump in on an individual class, you most certainly can do that. And I need to add people to the guest list. Yay! I need to add people to the guest list for this one. So hopefully that means you're going to be sent the new Zoom link for this particular one, because people who bought the 10-week, it doesn't automatically add people to the guest list every week, which really annoys me. So I have to go in and do it manually. So I will take care of all of that. I want to take care of all that business today. And although interestingly, the topic I have today has a little bit more to do with passivity, but we can talk about that in a moment. I did actually get a question from somebody about, not on the live stream itself, but after, about, because I have to sign up still, darn it, I keep forgetting. It's okay, you still have time. I get questions about, because you can see my bed is behind me, and I have my thing where I sit up, and I have my pillow, and I've gotten a question because I have usually 2 little stuffies that sit on my bed. And so, just a little bit of a stuffy break. I'll tell you about the 2 stuff. They're the only stuffed animals I have. I used to actually have a lot more fun things. I had, I remember I had a gossamer. Like if you guys remember Bugs Bunny, Gossamer, the big orange guy, big monster. I had a gossamer. I had a few black cat toys. I had different things, but over the years I've just not in my getting rid of stuff, not wanting to hang on to so much stuff. I've gotten rid of some of it. So, so people did ask me about the 2 that are on the bed, so I have them here. So one is Grumpy Cat. Okay, one is Tartar Sauce, who was the cat who was the Grumpy Cat meme for all those years, and passed away unfortunately. But I have my little Grumpy Cat stuffy because I used to love the Grumpy Cat memes. And made a few of my own. Oh my God, I love him. I have stuffies. I love stuffies too. We have a lot. Yeah, I used to have a lot more, and now I'm down to 2. Now, the second one that I have is actually a Shetland pony. Oh, good morning, Alex. Oh, I love Grumpy Cat. Yes, me too. And this is a Shetland pony, and this is actually a really special piece because I bought this in the Shetland Islands, and I bought it on the island of Fetlar, where they have a museum, like a folk museum. And what's unique about this little horse is, not only that he's blue, but that every single piece of him is handmade. So in other words, they have the Shetland sheep, right? They sheared the sheep. They spun and dyed the wool. This is spun and dyed wool in Shetland. Okay, good morning. And it's stuffed with the sheep's wool from the Shetlands. Every piece of this, in other words, is handmade, including the yarn, everything. So this is literally an entirely handmade Shetland pony, and not just, it's a beautiful stuffed pony, yes. Hello, very special. Yeah, so that's what I mean. It's a real artisan kind of a piece. So this is why I still, almost dropped this. This is why I still have, I don't know, I haven't decided whether it's a he or a she, but there's no, it's not identified on here. But but anyway, I picked this up, so yeah, so this is a little artisan piece that I have, and so that's why I still have this one. And so those are the 2 that I have. Those are the 2 that are left. So if that answers the question for the person who had asked me about it. So I was just talking about, for people who joined me a little late, I am going to be doing some work on the school. I do have an interview today about a chapter I did on black-eyed kids. Now, the black-eyed kids things is interesting because now I have never, you have a stuffed Baphomet squishy. I saw those. I love those. Sometime I would love to have a stuffed Baphomet. That would be really cool. But I have seen them. They have, there was a couple of interesting, people have had a couple of interesting stuffy interpretations of Baphomet. But I had, the whole thing about the black-eyed kids is, like I said, I've never seen one. I hope to never see one. I don't ever think that I actually would. They seem to, there seems to be something, they're an interesting kind of hybrid creature, because they're partially, they seem to be something that's vampiric. There seems to be something demonic. Also something having to do with aliens also seems to be connected in with the idea of the black-eyed child. And those of you who have not heard of these, I don't know if there's anybody who hasn't heard of the black-eyed kid. Sometimes I do run into people who've not heard of them. And basically it's literally these children who usually look really odd. They're usually dressed in clothing that looks out of place, like it's not the right time period or something. And they turn up, and they have so they have this, so they usually appear as children or teenagers, and they'll usually approach somebody and they want to get in somewhere. They want to get into your car. They want to get into your house. I was going to say, in occultism, aren't they considered demonic? They might be. They're certainly not a kind of being that you want to work with in any way, shape, or form. They have that vampirism to them, in the sense that they need the invitation to come in, or maybe even the demonic. You can look at it that way as well. They need an invitation to come in, and of course, there's not too much that's written about them. I think it's David Weatherly. Is that his name? I think that's his name. Who did a whole book on black-eyed kids and collecting certain accounts. First one I think came about. Good morning, Sam. We're just talking about black-eyed kids. And I think the first encounter that was at least recorded that we know of was from the 1990s. But according to the book, it seems like there may have been encounters before that. It's just not a phenomenon that was discussed. And of course, there's a discussion of whether or not, one person's seen one, now everybody's seeing them. Interesting, I'm writing that down. Yeah, I do have a whole chapter that I wrote on it. But connected to the idea of the child archetype, because I think back to Jung's piece, which was called, I think it was something like Civilization in Transition. I can't think that's the title of his essay, but as part of it, he was talking about like the sudden frequency of UFO sightings, and of course he looked at UFOs and their shape. He's like, well, they're almost like mandala type like things. Good morning, Melissa. So they're almost like these mandalas, and so he often wondered, like, okay, is the sudden when you have a sudden mass sighting of a phenomenon from a psychological perspective, the question then becomes, well, what does the fact that everybody is seeing this mean? What does it mean on a psychological level? Now, you can talk about what it might mean spiritually or otherwise, but when we talk about synchronicity, when we see the appearance of an archetype over and over again that constellates and comes into our view, the question is, when it takes a new form, what exactly is it? What is this that we're seeing? Now, I only know of one person, and I'm not going to name names or anything. I'm not even sure that she really would want me to tell the story. I do know one person who has actually seen, I think it was more her husband than her, who had seen a black-eyed kid, somebody in Jersey. And it was, and the thing is, she didn't know, she'd never heard of black-eyed kids. She just knows she said she had woken up, and they had woken up at about 3 a.m., I guess it was, and there was like a loud, insistent knocking on their door. And being they kind of live in a more urban area, sometimes you get people who get dropped off, they're drinking, they're at the wrong house, that kind of stuff can happen. And they do have a porch, so it's not like they just have to open the door out into the street. So there's a window that they can look out rather than go to the door and have to talk through the door or open the door. And so he got up and checked and asked there was a woman standing on their porch. And but this woman, the way that she was just kind of odd. She was just standing and she kept saying, like, I forget what it was that she said, like, oh, like, I need to get home. And he's like, well, do you want me to call the police for you? Do you want me? He wasn't going to open the door. And my friend said, for whatever reason, she said, I was in our bedroom, but I was laying there in abject terror. Like, I was saying to him, for the love of God, do not open that door. Like, she didn't know why. She just knew she was absolutely, absolutely terrified and was like, do not open that door. And he didn't open the door. And the person eventually did go away, but they kept trying to get him to let them in so that they could make a call. And they just kind of kept repeating the same thing over and over again, almost robotically. And he was just like, well, I'll call the police for you. But I'm, I can call this program, I can call it, but I'm not, I'm not opening the door to a stranger at 3 a.m. And the person did, and finally when he had turned, they went away. I don't remember if they just abruptly went away or if they just turned around and walked away. That I don't quite remember. But so that's the only person, and that was literally, I mean, my friend didn't even know that I'd actually written this article. She didn't know anything, and she'd never heard of it until I had sent her something about it. It was one of those radio shows. It might have been a coast-to-coast radio show, like one of those, where we some reason we got talking about the topic. She's like, that would be interesting. And then after she heard it, she said, oh my God, that's what I think happened to us. So I that was the only person I know who, and again, I'm not going to give any details about her, but I remember her telling me this story. So that's the only story I've ever heard from somebody who I personally know who's actually seen one. Someone recounted a story to me of a police officer who had stopped him and his family. Well, the officer was in my. Oh, that's interesting. That's actually a little bit different because it's not like a child saying, "Oh, I need to call my parents." Like but nonetheless, it does still seem like there's sometimes you do have these kinds of, that would these kinds of I don't know. We don't really know what they are. But the question is, why do they start appearing? And again, you can talk about any kind of spiritual reason why they might be appearing or what they might be from that perspective. From a psychological perspective, though, it's like, okay, what is happening in the mass consciousness that's generating these kinds of sightings? So anyway, that's what the article kind of deals with. But it ends up kind of making some comparisons to, to movies and things, about children and about children who come into a town and who are more diabolical in their inflection or in their intentions. So, yeah. So there's definitely some of the discussion, changeling or skinwalkers. You know what? Those are other things. Changelings, I think, have been a thing that have been around for a very long time. I mean, you hear about changeling stories from back, even in like probably late Middle Ages to early, even Renaissance, like when you talk about those areas. And then skinwalkers, of course, has been a thing since, that kind of Navajo legend has spread. You see a lot. I've been watching a lot of videos about I don't know if you say Appalachia or Appalachia. I've heard it both ways. I always said Appalachia growing up. But the Appalachian Mountains regions, and people are talking about seeing these kinds of creatures, which they're not sure, like they're cryptids of some type, and what people are catching on videos and what the rules are. Like if you live in Appalachia, there's the whole, you go to bed at night, you close the curtains, you don't look outside. If you hear whistling, if you hear your name called, no you didn't. If you see something, no you didn't. I mean, that's the kind of lore around it. And it's been interesting to watch, and it's an interesting and some of them it's hard to tell whether or not, I mean, again, we live in a world where things can be faked. So some of it's really hard to tell whether, some of them I'm on the fence about. I'm like, that could just be a person going out and, in a costume and goofing, doing something, with some of them. Other ones I'm not so sure. And the idea of you like walking in the middle of the woods, like in the middle of the nowhere, and then have something, X-Files, Chupacabra. Yeah, well, Chupacabra is almost like another, there's the idea of that being kind of a almost wolf-like creature, but it's a kind of a hybrid between different things. And again, what the reality is of these things. One of the things people will say is that the reason, like everything from Bigfoot to other cryptids, to other things that creatures that appear, or alien type creatures, is that people say, oh well, no one's ever seen one, no one's ever recovered a body. There was a cartoon I remember I saw years ago that was really funny. Maybe not even years ago, it might have been. Time has no meaning to me anymore. But there was one where it was like you had ghosts and aliens, and you had like this Bigfoot standing at the blackboard, and it was basically he's writing on the blackboard, how to avoid being photographed. It was it's kind of funny. They're all taking notes on like how to avoid people from seeing them. But a lot of times what they say is because if they are actually interdimensional beings, that they may be something that just passes through and then disappears again. If you have these different kinds of holes in our reality. So that would be looking at it from from that perspective. Probably the only thing we're seeing right now, well, maybe not the only one, but of course the most popular one would be, we lost all concept of time since 2020. Yeah, well, yeah, true. With COVID, it was just kind of like, Skinwalker Ranch, Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch is probably the only show that's dealing with the possibility of a wormhole in that space. But supposedly they're in different places. Mount Shasta's supposed to have. Men in Black is one of my favorite movies. So, okay. So in theory, we could be a Bigfoot coming back to visit in a concurrent life. In theory, yeah, you could be. It's yeah. I mean, if but by that kind of quantum soul theory, yeah, I don't, why not, right? Same here. So yeah, it's very much. They're basically, I think what the point is that there's just different kinds of beings that come into our space, and we don't know exactly where they're coming from. We don't know, but I still feel when I talk about psychological phenomenon, I'm not always talking about just the traumas we've suffered or our life experience. I'm always talking about it with respect to what's coming into our psychological view, what's in the mass culture, what is the collective story, and why do these collective stories come up, or why do they, why do we see these at the times that we do? A lot of times when there's a story or a narrative that is problematic for us as a culture, that's when all of a sudden you'll start to see things kind of rise up in our face and then happen. And then you might start seeing spontaneously sightings of certain kinds of beings. So again, while they're not necessarily, when I say psychological, I don't mean made up in the mind. I don't mean like, you have an active imagination and you made it up. Because I know that there's people who legitimately see things. And I don't have any reason to believe that we're the only, that what we occupy in our dimensional space is the only thing that's here. In fact, I'm certain that that's not the case. But it's, but what that actually means when you start having these kind of mass sightings, like what is that saying about what's happening collectively, rather than maybe something that's just happening for an individual, or an individual who happens to be in the right place at the right time. What is it? What goes on there and what's it all about? But it's interesting because it was something somebody had brought up here, and I can't remember, but you sparked in my mind the thing I actually wanted to talk about. Now, I had an interesting Azrael message this morning about, and it was really weird because it came up as people using the Son of God narrative as a kind of a terrifying circular story. It's, well, we could have created a rift, but I think also there's just rifts that are happening anyway. I think we don't really understand how a lot of it works. We only see what we see in our causal day-to-day repeated patterns that we're used to. Some people see beyond that, but then they question about whether or not, okay, am I really seeing this, or am I losing it? You know what I mean? Like, and I've talked already about brain filters and things like that, and what you're seeing and what you're not. There are timeline shifts, yes. And if I see a TARDIS, I'm jumping in. Yeah, maybe if you want to. Honestly, yeah, and actually that's what he had said. There's going to be another timeline shift around the time of the eclipses, is what I heard this morning. And he also was talking about, it was interesting, he was talking about the circular, terrifying narrative of the Son of God. And that kind of gets me back to the whole thing about the empire never ended, where people ended the Roman Empire, and it seems like we're just repeating that phase over and over and over again. But when I delved a little more into that, I'm like, well, what exactly does that mean? Like, why? Because he's saying time has shown the truth. Time has shown that narrative isn't true. Time can take you out of the fear narrative. And so I said to him, well, why does this come up now? And I was seeing a lot about earth and water in the past, and fire and air kind of moving forward, like all this fire and air energy. And I said, okay, so that's the other astrological shift that we're having. We have Neptune moving into Aries. We're going to have, what was the other thing? We're going to have Uranus moving into Gemini. We're going to have Pluto moving into Aquarius. What are our timeline shifts? Okay, a timeline shift is, well, it's interesting. They're a little hard to explain. what it is it's like we're living in a particular reality or dimension. And if you think about quantum ideas of multiverses and things like that, the idea is that there's like almost an infinite multiplicity of possibilities as to how things can go. When you have a timeline shift, it's almost like you have a whole, it's not just you individually, but rather it's almost like a whole culture or a whole area kind of picks up and jumps, where it's like all of a sudden the path that you were on, what the destination you were headed to suddenly becomes, it's like that a different possibility now suddenly has shifted in as the one. And it happens in a way, and again, it seems to happen around cataclysmic planetary events and other things. There's some people who get really, really into the whole idea of timelines and timeline shifts who, and there's some people who say, well, they happen with solar flares. Some people say they happen with, but whatever it is, it's something that affects, because time and space are part of the dimensional space that we live in, that there's something that affects it and changes the way things are going. That's why a lot of times it's hard to say, like when I read cards and people say, well, what's the outcome going to be? And sometimes the outcome appears to be going in a certain way, but if there's a shift or a jump, then the timeline appears to be going in a different way. One dramatic timeline shift I think that I noticed was at the end of June of this year. And I was told that one was going to happen, but it was like we literally, if people remember what happened even just, and I don't want to get into politics here, but if we just think about how things shifted politically. Stephen Cuspe Puma is a Peruvian shaman, says we're coming to a new point according to their calendar. I'll send you the video. He's a shaman medicine keeper. Okay. Yeah. Well, this is it. And people are looking at it from different perspectives. It was interesting. Yeah, there does seem to be this shift does the measure of pace of time change? It's kind of both, because I think when the shifts happen, you do find that time runs differently, and it may not be a startling change. It may be because you do hear about people, for example, when they talk about, UFO incidents and stuff, where all of a sudden it was like, oh, it should have been 5 minutes and it was 5 hours. Like you hear about things like that. I mean, yeah, that can be kind of a time jump there where there's lost time. That's the idea of lost time. A timeline shift is more like the whole dimensional space and the outcome. We're coming out of a 1,000-year time period of operating in a regressed state. Yeah, and actually that jives with what Azrael said, because literally the first message I have where you can actually hear him on audio, he literally says 1,000. And that's what he keeps saying to me. There's been 1,000 years. We're done with 1,000 years. Like that keeps coming up. So, I mean, that's a Peruvian shaman. That's that's not, I mean, they're not coming from the same cultural space. Me and that one Reiki session I was giving. Yeah, I think timeline shifts is a very liminal thing. Leaves room for personal experience and interpretation. Yeah, and liminality is my thing. I'm always I'm transition life coaching, right? I mean, we're talking about being on the edge. And it does feel like we are, well, I think depending on where you're at, culturally, you're going to experience that idea differently. But we have this movement, and we have this change that's going on. There's clearly, you can feel that there's a shift going on culturally. Because like I said, even if I just think about where everybody felt at the end of June versus the completely different landscape by the end of July, I just even remember watching some of the late night people on TV going like, wait a minute, what just happened? Like, it like really weird, like shifts, okay? That just seem to happen overnight. And that's not just what's happening here politically in the US, it's happening elsewhere as well. There's all of a sudden this stuff coming up that, I don't know, there's just things that are happening. Some of them are good, some of them maybe not good to people, but thanks, share the video, I'm curious. Yeah, if you shared the link, or maybe even if you put it in your story, Joanne, maybe that would be a good thing. If you put it in your story, then maybe people, then if you can always paste the link. There's a little thing where you can put, there's a little link button you can choose, say click to watch, and then people could watch it from there. Or if you just want to send it to me, I can share it with, you'll send it to me. Okay, well, you know what, then if you send it to me, I'll share it that way. You're interested too. Yeah, okay, so I will, I'll email it out to everybody, too. Or I'll try, you don't have to, or you can just send it to me and I'll take care of it. That's fine, I don't mind doing that. So we can take a look at it. But I feel like there's a shift going on, and that kind of gets to what my topic was going to be today, which was a little bit about passivity. Because one thing that keeps coming up, and it came up in yesterday's reading, was the idea that we need to, right now is a time of passivity. Like I keep seeing a restriction. I keep seeing Five of Swords. I keep seeing Nauthies in the runes. It's like, okay, right now is a time where, again, probably, oh, he's wonderful. You're going to love him. Okay, cool. Where there is a, what was I saying? Where there has been this, we've had this movement ahead. We've had a very, very active July and August astrologically, and now things are quieting down. And what I'm literally being told is this is a time when you want to quiet down. You don't want to start too many new things. You want to be, even though Mercury retrograde's over, we still want to be finishing old business. Because whatever's happening with the eclipse are going to be taking us into a very new space. And passivity is not something that we're good with. Because literally what I keep getting is shake off other people's burdens and expectations and focus on whatever's going to take stress out of your life. Like that was the focus, the focal points that I had gotten for today. You know, don't listen to your inner voice, because right now, okay, I'll just give you an example of what I mean. Right now, today, all week, my inner voice has been telling me, forget everything else, just work on rewriting this one novel that I have. And I'm thinking, yeah, but I got a school to start. I got registration to do. And you notice I'm still doing all of these things. I have clients, I have things that are going on. But it's kind of like, well, yeah, you have your day-to-day responsibilities, but you need to get out of a space where you're stressing yourself about, oh, am I going to have, because I do have a lot of opportunity coming in from the outside, and I want to be careful to say, to not let my schedule be too taken over by things that are kind of outside of where I need to be. So, but it's interesting. I'm literally getting this vibe of like, just drop everything and continue writing. So, yeah, I mean, but I also did get this website up. I just want the website up and ready so people can start registering. I think that's what people actually want to do, is to start registering for this school. So I want to get that material up and some things, but beyond that, I want to be spending the rest of my time doing this writing and rewriting, because the narrative will not get out of my head, and it's, shifting and changing and so forth. So so I'm like, okay, that's a sign that, because again, it seems like it's something unimportant. Okay, I might release it as a book, but it's not like it's gonna pay the mortgage. I mean, nobody gets rich writing these days, or very rarely. I'd have to devote all my time to selling my books to get, to make any kind of a decent living off my writing, and I just have so many irons in the fire. I just kind of have the material out there for whoever finds it right now. But it's, but I'm feeling like, okay. So in the grand scheme of, the adulting things, that doesn't seem like it's very important, right? But I'm being told, no, well, forget about your ideas about important or other people's ideas of important. Like, you need to focus on what we're telling you is important, because we have a reason that you don't know. So yeah, I guess that's kind of the thing. And even like in the readings that I did, which I did get up, I didn't actually post it to my stories, but the Libra through Pisces readings have been up since yesterday. So, well, yeah, just do it. Absolutely. But it's just, yeah, there's just certain things where I just feel like we always have this thing about, yes, but I should be doing this, or this is more of the thing to be a good productive person, I should be spending it on this and not on that. And again, part of this revisiting this Capricorn energy is saying, okay, we're finishing up this business of what I should be doing, of this shouldness. And if we have any time to be passive, if we make time for ourselves, then it's like, well, I'm a bad person because I could be doing something productive. Passivity is a feminine trait, and if we're moving into a space of all the shoulds, yes. If we're moving into a space of we'll call it the divine feminine, okay? If we're going to move into that kind of space, part of feminine energy, at least in this culture, has to do, I mean, I realize in India, Shakti energy is active and creative, but there's a certain amount of passivity that's required. There's a sense of not doing stuff for a while, so that you have a space for the new stuff to come in. Because otherwise, you're just going to keep busying yourself with the same stuff over and over again. So how do you get yourself away from that is really what the question is. Let's see what our cards say for us today.
Yeah, this is definitely a release of the past here. Yeah, this is exactly what I'm saying. Okay, this is the moon card in this deck. This is the past lives. Okay? And we're talking about past lives, concurrent lives, all the people who were Bigfoots in their concurrent lives or whatever. But it's past lives. This is all the stuff that we don't see. It's all of the stuff that needs to be resolved and finished. Now, when we say past life stuff, this could have to do with our personal traumas, but it could also have to do with our collective ones. And when I get a message this morning that tells me like the circle of terror is coming to an end, and because that's really what it is, and then we kind of grab onto certain things and certain distractions to kind of try to comfort ourselves or to steady ourselves. But what at least what the celestial realm has been saying is that's not really the way you're supposed to live. That's not ever the way you were supposed to live, but that's the way our civilization has gone, at least since the time of the Roman Empire. Possibly before that too. There's some people who would argue that even before that you were seeing this kind of system being set up. But that seems to be the pivotal point. And the rise of Christianity is actually a pivotal thing, even though Christianity is not by far the only monotheistic religion out there, because that became the religion of empire, and it became, whatever it was meant to be, it became a tool for empire. Okay, so that's where the problem comes in, and that's the version, that imperial version that just keeps us in a loop of fear. And a lot of the fear that we see coming up now is because of these ideas that are less about, well, let's just say even Jesus and the teachings of Jesus, and more about the way in which this becomes a system of controlling people by making people behave in a certain way, by making people being ashamed of who they are and not pursuing the things that their soul really wants because no, it has to be in the interest of the state, or it has to be in the interest of whatever the ruling power is. And if you don't do that, the terrible things that are going to happen to you, you start developing this age where you start developing this whole iconography of hell and all of this stuff that, that it's all, and that's the other thing that came up for me too, was like all of that is mental construct. Guilt, yes. It creates a situation of guilt, yes. But it's all these mental constructs. Basically, that prison is a mental one. It's created it, and it's kind of, while we have a brain that filters things out, it's like we've created an additional construct. Our minds are doing that, and that's kind of the prison we're trying to break out of here. We're always going to have a certain amount of filtering so that we're not, if you walked in and saw everything dimensionally and timeline-wise as it probably really is, I wouldn't even be able to sit here and talk to you about it. It's not even comprehensible to the kind of nervous system and perceptual system that we have. That's why we don't perceive it. That's why we almost have, as Donald Hoffman says, we have the interface. Okay, he's a neuroscientist, and that's what he said. This is like an interface, and everything in the background, you could not function and do things or live the way that we have evolved to live if you were experiencing that all the time. People who are intuitive or psychic experience some of it. Can know how to get information, but you're still not going to go. That's why people tell you to be very careful with things like people like doing LSD trips and stuff, because you can literally lose your complete grounding in reality. I really nearly broke my interface over the weekend. Oh, I'm going to have to, I know we're chatting on Saturday, so you'll have to fill me in on that, unless you want to message me about it. But yeah, that's, wow. It's, it can happen. And when that happens, it's just, and also that's sometimes why we need to have certain guides to help us through it. People say, well, you should only be your own guide. Yeah, well, in some territory, you need a legitimate guide to kind of help you through. You know what I mean? To kind of help keep you deal with that kind of a situation or that kind of an opening up in a safe way. That's why, like I said, I don't recommend people who say they want to open their mind by dropping acid. I don't even think Jung was an advocate of that. He was just like, you may be ripping something open that you perceptually that you may not be prepared to deal with. And you think about how many people just completely lose their ability to connect to this world and to the society that they actually live in
No, don't. No, exactly. And you, because that's why we do grounding, by the way, because you want to make sure this is still where you are. Just don't, it's like, okay, we don't want to, it's interesting to explore. It's good to get this information, but do remember that this is where you are. So our inner feeling of which we're unaware. Adventure. Okay. Page of Pentacles. Moving into, a new space. This is an adventure. So in other words, this is what the Spirit's saying. Like, don't, too strong and chaotic. Hello. And, yeah, and so we're on an adventure. We're walking into a new space, okay? And just like I just said, we're guided. We're aware that we're guided. Probably all the people here are aware to some degree that they're guided, and if they're not, maybe you'll be aware after our class this weekend. But being guided. We're not, nobody's doing this alone, okay? All of us, no matter what we're going through, we're never doing it alone, okay? Okay, so the advice card is participation. So, yeah, we are being called to participate in this new reality, and this is more fire energy here. We're being called to participate. Four of Wands is like if you look at it in the Rider-Waite deck, is like there's a couple standing between these two pillars that almost make an 11-11. Some readers look at it that way, the 11-11, you know. But the idea is really that it's a gateway that you're about to pass through, and that's another thing. I've pulled the rune Thurasaz, which is the gateway rune. It's also called the Thorn rune, but it's like a gateway. You're getting ready to pass through. Speaking of liminality, you're getting ready to pass through a gateway, and on the other side, which you're not aware of right now, is an adventure. Okay, that there's a chance to go in and into that little rabbit hole and see what happens, right? And the outcome is, this is a Hierophant card. So again, this is the idea of having a guide or a mentor, but you're moving from this past space to nothingness. Okay, you're moving into adventure, and I never saw that in the card. Yeah, well, if you look at it, if you look at the way that the four wands are in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, you'll see that a lot of people look at it as an 11-11. And it is a gateway. In other words, look, okay, leave the past behind. Bless everything you've left behind. You know, be satisfied with what you've accomplished. Recognize that you've done something, but now there's something new that awaits. Okay? And nothingness is, that's it. You're walking into the darkness. You're like, in the sense of, not in the sense of like that people, and again, one of the things I want to do is get away from the idea of darkness as representing, oh, you're in the dark, you're in this evil space, you're in this bad space. No, the darkness is where the treasure is. Okay, darkness is where the treasure is. You're moving into that space, and dark. What we're really saying when we say it's dark is we're saying it's unfamiliar. It's unfamiliar. I don't know what's there. So a lot of times that's why we need to kind of tie up the things and get rid of the past and leave it behind. Because when you're moving into the new space, you don't want to be carrying the past with you. You're going on a long adventure. You're going on a climb, and you don't need all the crap that you had with you on your back to go with you. You want to go without all of that. Okay? And that means a lot of times, sometimes think about it. Every time I think about moving, I look at my house, I'm like, okay, what can I empty out? What don't I need? What don't I need? And that's why my mother keeps turning up, and she'll be like, oh, do you want this thing I've gotten or that thing? And I'm like, I don't want any more things in this house. I don't want, again, occasional little new thing here and there, but I want stuff that, and that's why I don't buy things. You in my bathroom, my towels are all frayed and stuff, because I don't want new things. I want, is nothingness peaceful? Well, if we're talking about it in the sense of nirvana, it is a state of bliss. But that would be a state akin maybe to samadhi, where you are just in this space because in that space, actually that is a state of knowing. It's a state of nothingness, but it's an awareness that that the reality is beyond things. Okay, it's beyond things. It's really that concept of Maya, that really what we think is solid and real is really illusory. Okay, I echo that. I've sloughed off many, many materials over the last 2 months. Great reading today. Oh, you're welcome. And yeah,
And we also have, I also pulled an essential oil card. Today's card is ginger. Not without your crystals. I've unloaded a lot of crystals recently. But coming from a place with no closets, when I got divorced, I literally had one little closet in my new apartment. I moved from a house to an apartment, and it was like I think it was 7 boxes with me, total, for the entire, and they weren't big boxes, they were little boxes. And I had bought new furniture. That was a really good feeling of like, I have just sloughed everything off. And I moved into a house now, but this is not a big house. So my feeling is, when the time to go, it can all go in the dumpster. It can all just go. If there's certain things people want, they can have it. I don't know why, but up here, closets are tiny. There's probably a colonial reason for that, because I think there was the idea that your closet would have been considered a room. So if you're in an old house, if you were in an old house, then your closet you would have been taxed it as a room. So I remember a lot of colonial houses don't. If you're in an old house, they don't have closets, a lot of them. This one, the one I have in my room is mine's not really, it's 1850s. It's a little bit past that, but, okay. The meaning of this card is will. Okay, that's the key word. Trigger statement is I am a victim. The true statement is I am powerful beyond measure. You are strong and capable. With gratitude, optimism, and action, manifest the life you desire. Yes, so right now we are just getting ready for that life in which we're actually able to manifest things. 1890s. A lot of times, the styles, they were not necessarily built with closet space. That's definitely a later development. So I feel like I'm talking about 3 different things here. But anyway, case, we're at the end of the live stream, so I want to say thank you all for joining me. I hope some of this was useful and enlightening. We kind of had a weird range of topics today, from black-eyed kids to Azrael messages to... Ooh, post a pic of this card. I like this one. The ginger one, you mean? Is this the one you want? Because I can take a picture of it and I can post it. So you definitely, thanks so much. You're welcome. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Yes, the ginger one. Okay, I will take a picture and post it. Thank you. And so we'll see what comes up for tomorrow. But so all of you have a good. Jenny reminded me yesterday. I said Tuesday and it was actually Wednesday, and I was like, I don't know what day it is. But it's but yes, Thursday. Okay, so yes, all of you have a wonderful day, and some of you I will be talking to very, very soon, even outside the live stream. But I will hopefully see you all tomorrow. Take care.